The disasters of Starfield continue.
Earlier today, Starfield got its biggest update ever, this being about 25 gigabytes on consoles, but much smaller at just 1 gigabyte on PC. This update is easily the largest so far, both in terms of content added, but also in the likelihood to get you playing again, as some of the changes brought by this one are genuinely interesting and can have some pretty big impacts on gameplay. But also make sure to stick around to the end of this video, because I think for a lot of you, you're going to be reinstalling Starfield very soon. The most notable of the new features will be for console users, as you'll finally be able to play Starfield at 60 FPS on the Xbox Series X. Sadly,
finally, 60 FPS is in our grasp. What's that, Todd? What's that, Todd? I need to buy a new TV? Okay, Todd, you got it. I already bought a new PC to play Starfield. What's a new television at this point? The joys. The joys of Bethesda being incompetent. Starfield Shattered Space is probably going to require for you to buy a house and a new car. It's going to be great, boys. Trust.
the Series S didn't receive any of these new features, but now in Starfield, you'll have the option to select both an FPS target and whether performance or visuals should.
I love that it's a target. I love that they're saying, hey, maybe you don't reach the target, but that's why it's a target.
Should be the priority on most display
Priority 60 FPS with performance in mind or visuals in mind. How does this even work? How can you do this? How does this make sense? We want to prioritize the frame rate of 60 FPS, but with visuals or a performance? Why do I need to choose? This is great.
Out there, you'll be able to select either a 30 or 60 FPS option, but on a variable refresh rate display that is also running at 120 Hz, you can select 40 or even an uncapped FPS for the game. Switching between
uncapped caps at 60 anyway, by the way, just FYI. Bethesda heard that people are pissed that the frame rate is still capped, so they created an uncapped version, but it still caps at 60 FPS, but it's at least called uncapped.
Visuals or performance will obviously tune up or tune down the game. You can definitely notice.
Wait, what? Okay, maybe I'm blind, but the only difference I see here is this. Look at this. So there's a little bit more texture here and there's less texture here. And the difference is beyond minor. I guess this rock has a little bit more rockness to it, and this one has a little bit less. I guess. So the difference between performance and visual is, as expected, 0. As expected, 0. And where it's visible, you don't even know if it's actually better than the old one. Again, does this look better or does this look better? I'm not sure which is supposed to look better. I'm kind of actually going towards performance here. I'm not sure. Oh, Starfield, never change. It's like when they did the light changes, and everyone was shilling for that, and they were like, "Oh my God, look at this one spot that now the light is better." Let's ignore the fact that the light is worse everywhere else in the game, but this one spot, the light changes are really good.
These differences in some distant details around the world and on the map, but also sometimes in reflections. But regardless of whether you pick the visual or the performance mode, both of these will dynamically tune down your resolution as the game gets more intensive. So on one hand, there's going to be more or less detail depending if you're on visual or performance, but also as you play, the game will be dynamically going up or down in resolution to try and hit 30 or 60 FPS. Obviously, it'll happen most often with 60 FPS as it tries to get you to that target. And I'm sure for the vast majority of you that care about this mode, you just want to hit 60 FPS with Starfield, and thankfully you can do this pretty consistently with the performance mode. The overwhelming majority of the time, this game ran at a rock-solid 60.
I love that this is the first encounter with pirates and half of them just run at you with axes.
60 FPS as I was playing. It wasn't perfect. Occasionally you would get a minor dip or stutter here or there, especially as a lot was going on. Or
this is literally the first fight in the game.
If you're loading into a new area. And conversely, when playing with a visuals priority, you would
This is the second fight in the game.
Still be able to hit 60 FPS in a lot of places, particularly if you're in a smaller interior location.
This is a great place because you just don't have enough ammo. You just don't. you get the Grendel, which is 150 extra ammo and 50 in the chamber already, and you need to and that's barely enough to kill 2 enemies on average. It's great.
Still comfortably hit 60 FPS even on visuals, but when it came to some of the open areas, and especially when combat began, you could definitely feel the game slip under 60 FPS here. So if you're really just trying to play Starfield,
The worst part about the combat, it's not like it's massive combat, it's like 2 or maybe 3 enemies on the screen.
at 60 FPS, you will need to be on the performance mode, although there is going to be one major exception for when you won't hit 60 FPS and not even close. The 2 major cities of New Atlantis and Aquila City will not run at 60 FPS. Immediately
But of course they won't. What did you expect?
upon landing here, you'll feel major FPS drops. And one of the interesting things I noticed is performance here is actually pretty similar, regardless of whether you're on the performance or the visuals mode. New Atlantis and Aquila City are very CPU bound, so just tuning down the visuals isn't making a huge difference in your overall performance. And it felt like on both performance and visuals,
So effectively, he's just saying this game is optimized like a crack, like a barrel filled with crack addicts, and yeah, that's kind of it.
mode, I was getting around 40 FPS at points, which of course is quite the downgrade.
Okay, we have noticed a bunch of NPCs.
Of course, is
Okay, let's see. So, can we spot the same NPC twice already? Let's see. This and this, is that the same NPC or is that just the same hairstyle? No. But are more than half of these NPCs fat? Yes. Yes, sadly, yes. Can we seriously not spot any of the same NPC? That's kind of amazing if that's true. Should not be true because this is Starfield we're talking about. Usually when you see a cluster of NPCs like this, you see the same NPC 3 times. I think this is the like, for example, this is the same jacket 3 times in a row, which is hilarious. This is the same design of clothing right here and here. Also, it's just different colors. So, we're not getting the exact same NPC, but it's almost the exact same NPC. And I bet their faces look alike, because they always do.
quite the downgrade compared to playing at 60, and you definitely feel this contrast. The 40 FPS mode does provide a nice alternative if you can stomach 40 FPS. For me, it just feels so much worse after 60, and the Uncapped mode is a pretty interesting inclusion. In some interiors, you are definitely getting a ton of FPS in Starfield. I was well above 60, and it really felt like I was at 80 to 90 FPS. But the only time you're going to get FPS that high are in some of these smaller and very constrained interiors where there just isn't a lot going on. The second action begins, or you step out into the broad world, you're going to basically be at 60 FPS once again, even on this Uncapped mode. So while I'm glad they just
Wow.
included the Uncapped
Okay.
mode, because
Okay, let's see.
why not? More
I couldn't
options is
see
always
anything.
better. Unless
Also, this looks even worse than what I remember the last time seeing this. What the hell?
the game gets a bunch of additional performance improvements in the future, this one doesn't really make a huge difference, and it's still going to play very similar to just having a 60 FPS lock. Generally speaking, I think these new settings are a phenomenal new addition. You'll have far more choice as a user, and finally being able to play Starfield at 60 FPS most of the time is a massive upgrade. For me personally,
Most of the time.
30 FPS is borderline unplayable. I've been playing at 100 plus FPS for the past decade on PC, but thankfully you still will have an option if it doesn't bother you as much. You can just switch to that 40 FPS visuals mode and have
What Bethesda game is actually playable at 100 FPS, honestly? Does any Bethesda game support actual FPS?
a pretty rock solid and great looking experience. The other highly publicized feature
Bro, what the hell is with that bitch stance? Look at this dude. That was fine work. Can you now put me in my GIMP suit? What the hell is this? Was it that bad? I don't remember him standing like some kind of... What the hell?
The other highly publicized feature from this one were the new surface maps. Instead of these
Oh,
crude maps
boy.
for some locations, now at every landable spot you'll have
I mean, the fact that this even actually made it into the game in the first place is 2 thumbs up, boys. Actually, 3 thumbs up if I could.
some locations, now at every landable spot you'll have a
Yep, and
nicely
look at this. Now you can clearly, without question, see how little effort, how no detail, how small everything in this game is. There is no longer any question. You can just press the M button. No, actually, knowing Bethesda, the map is probably not M. You probably need to, like, click 5 times before you get to the map. But whatever, how many clicks or whatever you need to do, now you know how bad things really are. Yeah, this is amazing. There is a reason they didn't add maps in the start, and this is that reason. Like, what the hell are you supposed to do here? What is there supposed to be here? This is their grand handmade city. This is the first city you're in. This is the big cheese. And this is all that there is to it. That is sad.
Generated 3D map of the surrounding area, and this will include all of the nearby points of interest that are randomly generated. The best versions of these maps will of course be at the major cities. You'll get this beautiful 3D rendition of the city, but to go
Yeah, it's a beautiful 3D rendition of this city. So beautiful.
along with this, Bethesda also added in a ton of new map markers for all of the major locations in that city. And when it comes to the well and neon core, there are even secondary interior maps to make navigating those areas a bit easier. And while
Well, yeah, because these areas are made by some kind of autistic spastic.
easier. And while these new surface maps are gorgeous, I found that I'm not even really using them all that often. Now that all of the
Of course you aren't. That's the thing. Of course you aren't. Like, why would you need a map for this game? People were not saying, oh, we need a map because we need a map. People were saying it's hilarious that a game like this doesn't have a map. And now we know why, because adding a map kind of just shows how bad the game is.
major locations you'll want to head to have a map marker, I just found myself using the compass to navigate there, and then once I had that location discovered, I would just fast travel to it, which will significantly cut down on your travel time in many of the major cities.
An exploration game where you don't want to walk at all. I love it. I just love it. Again, every single time possible, they are just... Did my headset just magically die? I don't know just what happened. Sounded kind of sus, boys. But
Cities of Starfield.
oh yeah, my headset definitely died. But every single time you're just gonna use the fast travel option. That is the reality of what's gonna happen in this game without absolutely any question. Every time you can, you're gonna fast travel because the game's just completely dog water without fast traveling.
Although there is one very notable quirk around this, most of the newly fast travelable locations will place you just outside of that location, which in real terms, let's say you're
Which means Bethesda still wants you to experience the grand loading screen simulator that they made.
on Aquila, but want to get to your penthouse in New Atlantis. You'll need to travel to New Atlantis, go through the load screen there, and once you're landed, you'll be able to open the surface map. Then you can fast travel to your apartment. This will place you just outside of the apartment elevator, so then you run into the apartment elevator, ride it up to the top floor, this being a hidden load screen, and then finally you're in your apartment. So when it comes to navigation and finding where things are in some of the major cities, these surface maps are a
Again, if you're being a pro at this game, there's only 3 loading screens from any location to the other location, and usually they're in a row. And this is lovely. You got to love this.
massive new addition. It's really the new location markers that make this whole process a lot easier. But as far as actually getting to places quicker, this doesn't necessarily make the biggest difference, and if anything, actually increases the amount of load screens you'll see. I feel like a very easy way to upgrade this even further would just make it so you can fast travel to the interior of these locations. Like let's say here from Aquila, I could just fast travel to the interior of my apartment. That would actually cut out a ton of the process and be a really great upgrade. Unfortunately, right now, many of the interior locations, like shops you could find in major cities, won't let you open the surface map at all. So you'll have to exit that building first, then open the surface map to fast travel again. So overall,
that is hilarious, though. I did not expect something as bad as that, but I mean, Bethesda delivers again. Holy moly, this is
these new
bad.
surface maps and map markers are a gigantic upgrade, but I think with just a couple of more tweaks, it could be an even better experience for many players. A variety of new configurations configurable gameplay options were added in what is now a more in-depth difficulty menu for Starfield. The way this works is you can tune things up or down, and there's going to be a modifier for how much XP your character gains.
Okay, listen. Afflictions don't matter in this game. Todd Howard already said about them that no one cares about them. Affliction treatment, who cares? Because afflictions don't do anything. Affliction progression, who cares? Because afflictions don't do anything again. Environmental damage, who cares? Environmental damage doesn't matter. Again, we literally know this because Todd Howard stated this. Todd Howard is literally on camera saying afflictions, environmental damage, and all of that stuff, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't impact your character at all in reality. Oh boy.
And this includes many of the options you'd expect. Damage options around both ground and ship combat, but also the ability to edit how much damage an enemy deals to you, and separately, how much you deal to them. Included with this is a brand new extreme difficulty mode. This is harder than any of the previous available options, and with this enabled, the game becomes dramatically more difficult. In space combat, you'll die incredibly fast now, while in ground combat, your main weapon will become—
Well, space combat is not difficult, space combat is just stupid. Because no one wants space combat, so they ignore space combat, which means most people who actually play Starfield for more than 5 hours get to the point where, well, they're still strong and can one-shot things on ground, but they have never actually did anything to improve their spaceships, because why would you? And then there's a mandatory space fight and you just die because you have never even bothered upgrading the ship. There you go.
A pea shooter while every enemy is firing armor-piercing rounds against you. Not literally, but that's definitely how it feels with how much damage you're dealing compared to receiving. But thankfully, the beauty of these new gameplay options is you could tune this on the fly. For me, I really enjoyed having enemies take a lot of my health per shot, but I prefer dealing normal damage and not turning every single enemy into a bullet sponge. Beyond that, there's also
every single enemy already is a bullet sponge in this game, unless you find a good weapon that one-shots them, and then they're not bullet sponge anymore. It's great.
To be a variety of new survival settings. You can give ammo weight, make afflictions even more impactful and harder to cure, and
food healing is dumb because food doesn't heal properly.
Of course, require your character to eat and drink, finally giving food a larger purpose in the game. There are a couple of options for this one. You can make it so eating and drinking will just give you a buff, but never give you a debuff if you don't do it, or have the typical survival mechanic, where you need to eat and drink to not get a debuffed character. Right now, this is a very simple implementation. Any drink or food item will temporarily remove the debuff and give you a new buff for 30 in-game minutes. So there's really no in-between. You either just ate and are now nourished, or you haven't eaten for 30 minutes.
30 real-life minutes, he means, because 30 in-game minutes is like 5 minutes in real life.
And you're malnourished. And just consuming one item will dictate which status you're in. But what will likely end up becoming some of the most used of these features are all of the new quality of life additions. You can make it so vendors will have way more credits, so you can access your ship's inventory from anywhere, not just near the ship, or even so you have dramatically increased carry weight on your character. And considering this is a setting you can adjust on the fly, I imagine there's going to be quite a few of you that tune this up right as you become over-encumbered. These new gameplay options are probably going to be the most impactful aspect of this update, because it really does give you so much more control over how you play and enjoy Starfield. The build your own difficulty mode, I think, is a phenomenal addition to the
I think it's dumb.
Game, and I hope we get even more extreme and additional options in the future. You can now decorate the interiors of your ships in Starfield. Once you're on board, you'll be able to enter into this new build menu and add new objects onto your ship. There's a quirk with this one where you can't actually edit any of the existing things on your ship, so you can place and move.
Obviously not, because, you know, Bethesda is more important than you savage animal.
Around this new chair, but I can't move that already placed chair that was added in by the Hab module I chose. But thankfully Bethesda thought of this, so to go along with this, you're going to also have a variety of new empty Habs that you can build for your ship.
So instead of just the ability to actually move everything how you want, they just added empty modules because, yeah, sure. Why not?
It'll basically just be a gutted interior in the style of whatever the interior would be. So you can then freely decorate the interior.
I can already see how Bethesda said, someone at Bethesda said, right, we're gonna make it so you can remove everything for a modular. And someone with purple hair started crying, but I spent so long designing this module and how it looks. And then they start bawling their eyes out because reasons. Oh, I can already tell it's great.
Of your ship however you wanted to, just like the exterior. And this does feel like a pretty phenomenal addition. I don't personally build too much in Starfield, it's definitely not my favorite aspect of Bethesda games, but for a lot of you out there, you're probably going to spend a dozen hours building ships in Starfield now because these new features can be very powerful. As well as there are several miscellaneous changes that actually do have a pretty big impact on gameplay. All the containers, and most notably those on board of ships, will now have tabs for the various item categories, as opposed to just being one large list of items. This makes item storage and organization far simpler and easier to navigate, and you could
I can already see a bunch of issues. One of the biggest issues of managing your inventories was the fact that you go to your ship's inventory, you click E once, but then you click E another time because the menu just takes that long to open, and you have stored something in the ship's inventory, and you have no fucking clue what you just stored. Great system. Great system. So this is not game proved. Again, literally in 3 days, there was a mod that actually makes these inventory systems manageable, but Bethesda still can't do it. There's literally modders that made these inventory systems good in, less than 3 days. And Bethesda still can't do it, and it's a complete shitty looking thing. Look at this.
changes that actually do have a pretty big impact on gameplay.
Look at this. Weapons. Wow, that's so crazy. Too bad this doesn't actually sort anything.
All the containers, and most notably those on board of ships, will now have tabs for the various item categories, as opposed to just being one large list of items. This makes item storage and organization
It's still gonna be bad.
far simpler and easier to navigate, and you could really just use one container now. There's a new setting to disable the dialogue camera, so instead of getting this zoomed in perspective, when you enter into dialogue, you'll just remain in the first person perspective.
Okay, I don't know what I want more. To see the ugly face or to see him stand like some kind of bitch?
In the first person perspective. I really like this one. I feel like it does up the immersion factor as you're going through some of the quests. Unfortunately, as you enter into this one, you're locked in place. I can look around, but my character can't actually move. This is likely due to some kind of technical limitation by adding this feature in after the fact. But for me, I'm going to be keeping this feature on. I really like the way it functions, and I really do think it ups the immersion. And just in time for mods and a new playthrough, you also will now have the ability to alter your traits and appearance after going through the Unity and entering into New Game Plus. Being able to try out
Yay, altering your body that doesn't matter and altering the traits that don't change the gameplay. I am so happy.
New traits for a new playthrough is really just a fantastic addition and will likely get many more players to go through the Unity as opposed to just starting a new character. Beyond that, a variety of stability and bug fixes were also included with this update, but overall I really think this is a fantastic update for Starfield. If you weren't already
Overall, I think you need to be insane to think Starfield is a good game, not gonna lie. And if you think that this update is anything else than just Bethesda being happy about the fact that they added more loading screens to your gameplay, I don't know what to say. Anyway, that was our boy's Juicy Head. And this was because they're insane. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.